So hi everyone, and thanks for joining us in our webinar this afternoon. So just a quick introduction, I'm Bettina and this is Daisy, sort of below or wherever she is on the screen. And we are Plastic-Free Hackney. So we are an environmental group looking to reduce the amount of single-use plastics and kind of single-use generally within Hackney. We do this kind of through a variety of ways. So we, this isn't working. So we have a mission statement. So we are a campaign group committed to creating a cleaner and greener community for everyone. We aim to do this through a circular approach, raising awareness of the issues of single-use plastics and working with groups to find sustainable alternatives, organising litter picks and community events to remove plastic pollution from our environment, and instigating planting projects that benefit both the community and our natural world. So sort of just a few examples of things we've done. So we've done like a tree planting event. This was a couple of years ago. And we organised litter picks, which obviously we've had to put on hold for the moment, but this was a big one we did. We cleared a lot of rubbish that day. We also run, oh yeah, this was a nice before and after shot, which is quite satisfying. Sadly, the waste around the marshes and the Lee are getting a bit out of hand at the moment, but hopefully we'll be back out litter picking soon and hopefully people will stop dropping rubbish in the first place. We also run workshops. So this was a how to make your own low-cost plastic-free cleaning products. We also did a similar one for sort of beauty products. And so yeah, just different awareness events and just things throughout the borough to try and raise the awareness of single-use plastics and sort of how we can find more sustainable alternatives. But sort of what we're going to do today really is we're going to discuss how you can reduce your own personal sort of plastic consumption, so on an individual level. And just as a sort of few bits that we'll be talking about, so that there'll be a poll that we'll launch kind of towards the end. It's an anonymous poll, but it's just a few little bits and pieces just to get an idea of where you are and age groups and things like that. So it's nothing major and it's all anonymous, but we'd appreciate if you could fill that in. Like we mentioned before, so Daisy will be here. She'll be fielding your questions. We'll have a Q&A at the end, but if there is anything that is that you want to raise sort of throughout, then feel free to write it in the chat and we can sort of address it there and then. But I think what we're going to start with is a video. It's a video from Friends of the Earth, which it kind of puts in a nutshell all the reasons why we sort of want to reduce our plastic consumption. I think, you know, we're all very aware that plastic is bad, but that kind of message of plastic is bad is kind of, sometimes you think, oh, but why is it bad? And, you know, you think, okay, well, the disposal of it isn't great, all of that, but actually it's so much bigger than that. And I don't know if anybody came to the screening of the story of plastic, but that really highlighted how through from its production all the way to its disposal, it's just a terribly polluting product. So I'm just going to share with you this video that kind of sums up what we were going to say. So I have to just do a bit of clunky screen sharing again now. Sorry, hold on.
In a little over a century, plastics have transformed the way we live. From wind turbines to aircraft wheels, they've helped build the modern world. Today, the latest versatile durable plastics help us to do more with less, reducing energy use, emissions and waste. And the fresh innovation and infrastructure they bring enables the creation of new jobs. But there's a problem. 40% of plastic in Europe is single-use packaging. And since the start of mass production in the 1950s,
I don't know if you can hear, but I don't, Bettina, the film isn't screening.
The film isn't screening.
And the majority has ended up in landfill, incinerated or polluting the planet.
Is it not? Sorry.
No, we were just getting the audio.
Ah. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Can you share it?
Yes, why don't you carry on chatting and I will have a go at getting it running.
Our first technical hitch of the day. Sorry about that. Let me stop sharing. I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry about that.
You chat, I'll find it.
Daisy is now going to look for the video and screen share, hopefully. Sorry, we're not that, it's all new to us, this technology, but we'll be with you in a minute.
Do you want to carry on with the presentation, Bettina, and then I'll interject when I've found it?
Yeah, although it kind of links on from that presentation. What I can sort of talk about actually is the next, so sort of fun, you know, a sort of really relevant point at the moment as well of plastic is the social justice issues around plastic pollution, which I don't think is really spoken about enough. So, you know, we've got this picture of a boy in the Philippines, and this is, you know, he's swimming in that, but he's also collecting the rubbish. And it's just really shocking what is happening, you know,
the modern world
in the global south. And this kind of environmental racism, it's not just occurring in places like in Southeast Asia, it's happening in countries like America. So I'm just going to read a case. So in the primarily African-American town of Mossville in Los Angeles, it's surrounded by 14 petrochemical plants. Residents suffer from diabetes, liver cancer, kidney problems, and the incidence of endometriosis is so high that disproportionate numbers of young women have had to undergo total hysterectomies. Blood tests have revealed 3 times the national average of dioxin, a byproduct of PVC manufacturing, in their bodies. Gulf communities of Southeast Texas, like Houston and Corpus Christi, are regularly subjected to disproportionate levels of benzene, a carcinogenic building block of plastics like PET, linked to leukemia and other blood disorders, and other hazardous chemicals used in the production of plastics and petroleum-based products, over and above safe standards. These illnesses are the price poor people are paying for us to have disposable plastics. So it's, you know, we just get the clean, shiny end. We get the clean, sanitized version without seeing the harm that is happening across the world. And for me, that's really shocking, and just, I think, something that needs to be highlighted much more. Right, Daisy, are you ready?
I am. Okay. Technical backup. Wish me luck.
I'm going to stop sharing. Daisy's go.
So I am now hoping that you're. Oh no. Ugh.
In a little over a century, plastics have transformed the way we live. From wind turbines to aircraft wings, they've helped build the modern world. Today, the latest versatile durable plastics help us to do more with less, reducing energy use, emissions, and waste. And the fresh innovation enables the creation of new jobs. But there's a problem. 40% of plastic in Europe is single-use packaging. And since the start of mass production in the 1950s, we humans have produced 8.3 billion tons of plastic in all, weighing the same as around 80 million blue whales. And the majority has ended up in landfill, incinerated, or polluting the planet. But the problem starts way before the plastic reaches our bins and rivers. Over 99% of plastics come from chemicals sourced from oil and gas production. The more plastics we make, the more oil and gas we use. So it's no surprise that many of the oil and gas companies behind the climate crisis are investing heavily in plastics production. Meanwhile, the expansion of oil and gas production has led to a dramatic fall in the cost of raw materials for plastics, and output is on the rise. Cheap fracked gas is also driving huge new investments in America and worldwide, with $164 billion funding 264 new facilities or expansion projects in the US alone. And with a wave of investment in China, Europe, and the Middle East, the global infrastructure for a new generation of production is well underway. So, is the coming increase in plastic production sustainable? And are the benefits worth the cost? There are few bigger long-term threats to our planet than greenhouse gases. These gases are already increasing global temperatures, melting ice caps, raising sea levels, threatening coastal cities. Right now, the production of plastic is responsible for 5% of global emissions. And in the years ahead,
the harmful gases from plastic production are set to grow almost 300%, meaning it will soon be a bigger contributor to climate change than aviation and shipping put together. In the last decade, humans produced more disposable plastic than in the entire 20th century, and we can all see the results. Yet the leading oil and gas companies plan to increase plastic production by an extra 40%. And this is a problem for all of us. Even if we could recycle every last piece of plastic we use, the damage caused by making it can't be undone. So as well as tackling the growing crisis of plastic waste, we also need to confront what happens at the start of the plastic's life cycle. The time to act is now. Because when the world's new plastics factories become a reality, they'll threaten the future of the planet with accelerated climate change. Friends of the Earth is working to change all of this for good. Join us and be part of the solution.
Okay. So those are the sort of fundamental reasons why we think we need to reduce plastics, and obviously there needs to be huge sort of there needs to be huge system change. There needs to be legislation behind it. There needs to be so many different things that need to happen from the producer's point of view and all the rest of it. It isn't enough just for us to kind of stop buying plastic water bottles. However, it's something that we can do. It's something that we can
in a little over a century,
and hopefully sort of, you know, not just individually, they may seem like small actions, but if we all do it, it sends out really powerful messages, and that way we can hopefully influence change. So I'm going to share my screen again now. So this is just images, so it shouldn't go wrong. Okay, so that was the next one. So I'm gonna, so these are kind of my top 10 tips for how you can sort of go plastic free in a way that is sort of sustainable to you as well. You know, it's hard, but so my first tip would really be to take it slow and think of going plastic free as a journey. You know, plastic is everywhere and it's so heavily embedded in our lives that to go cold turkey would be impossible. You would quickly lose motivation and think that it's an impossible task. But you know, if you think about it in terms of it's a journey going forward, and if you make just one sustainable choice per month, but that's enough for you to be able to stick with it and going forward do that, and then the next month make another change. That's enough. It's all positive changes in the right direction. So yeah, take it slow and don't worry if you do slip up. You know, perfection is the enemy of good. We're never going to be able to get this right, but as long as we're sort of conscious and we're aware, then we're just moving forward. And I think also this kind of take it slow, it's a mindset that we need to really embrace in terms of our consumption going forward. You know, this huge sort of amounts that we consume generally is just kind of ravaging the planet. We don't have enough resources to be able to compete with our throwaway culture and our sort of buy it, you know, oh, I need a new laptop, I need this, I need this. You know, we have to kind of take it slow and think, you know, do we need this, and how can I sort of buy it in the best way, and so on. So tip 1, take it slow. Tip 2 would be the basics. So here we're going to go right back to the basics and the 5 R's. So you might have remembered the 3 R's from school, reduce, reuse, recycle. So here there's a couple more, there's refuse and there's rot. So going back to basics, what we're going to do is, first of all, in order to reduce our plastic consumption, we're just going to refuse. We're going to refuse all the kind of superfluous, daily, pointless bits of plastic that come our way. You know, whether it's a coffee cup or a plastic bag or a straw or a stir or a pen, you know, a freebie pen, all those kind of freebies really kind of are just pointless and we don't need them. So it's kind of refusing all of that and setting yourself up with sort of new routines. So, you know, if you know, when you leave the house, you sort of make these new routines. And so a tote bag, for example, you know, they fold up really small. They're really useful and tiny, but, you know, they're only useful if you're using them. So you fold one of those up and you've got them in your bag. It's just new habits so that, you know, you never leave the house. Whenever you leave the house, you think, right, I've got my wallet, my phone, my keys. So these are just new habits that you're trying to form so that you're able to refuse these plastics. So now you think, right, I've got my keys, my wallet, my phone, my water bottle, and my tote bag, which just lives in the bottom of my other bag, whatever. And you know, if you drink coffee on the go all the time, then do you have your your reusable coffee cup? I know things at the moment are sort of tricky with all of the new kind of COVID health and safety regulations. So I know that some places now they're not taking reusable coffee cups. However, there is City to Sea have come up with a sort of scheme which allows you to use your coffee cup. It's kind of a whole no-touch way of doing that. And so, yeah, I mean, you could even sort of set yourself little challenges. So, you know, if you know that every morning, I mean, this is when we're all going back to work in sort of hopefully more normal times. If you just set yourself like a little challenge for whatever that be, like if you don't have your cup, then you're not going to have a coffee, or you have to have that coffee there in their reusable cup. But it's just about sort of making little habits, changing your sort of way of doing things, that this doesn't seem odd and a hassle after a while. And so number 3, know your enemy. So if you know what you throw away, you know what you can do next to avoid it. And by making waste more visible, it makes you more conscious of what you throw away. So what I would do initially would be limit the amount of bins you have, say in a workplace or in your home, to just 3 bins. And you have them in one sort of central location. And you have a recycling bin and a food waste bin and your sort of residual waste bin. I would also have a bin in the bathroom, because as everyone should know, only the 3 Ps should be being flushed. Yeah, this is another campaign by City to Sea, that paper, poo and pee are the only things that we should be going down the toilet, because plastics don't belong in the sea. So another little bathroom bin in your bathroom there. And then once you have got all your 3 bins, then the first place to start would be recycling. And whilst we're kind of going to try and reduce the amount we recycle as well, it's a good place to start. So where I would start is by looking at your council's recycling page on their website. So I don't know if you're aware, but the UK has an incredibly sort of piecemeal recycling system. What's acceptable in one borough is completely unacceptable in another. You know, you can cross the road and it's completely different rules for recycling. So just kind of start by checking out your council's website and seeing what's available, you know, what is possible in your borough. So you're not contaminating the recycling with stuff you can't recycle, and likewise you're recycling everything that you can. And then also food waste. So this is your 3rd basket, your 3rd waste basket. And if you're not food recycling, I would really urge you to start. Composting for 1 year can save global warming gases equivalent to your kettle's yearly CO2 emissions. I had some really interesting stats on this, which hopefully Daisy can share in the chat.
I can okay. Interject with,
yes.
I speak too. This is information direct from Hackney Council. So in Hackney, recycling crews collected 3,800 tonnes of food waste in 2019, which is about 500 tonnes more than the previous year. This food waste all goes to an anaerobic digester plant, known as the AD, to produce energy and biofertilizer. This was enough in 2019 to generate energy for 462 households out of this food waste, avoiding the need to use dirty fossil fuels and everything that links to air pollution, food resources and climate warming. But in Hackney alone, we still have 18,000 tonnes of food waste that gets sent to the incinerator, and we only capture about 17% of the food waste. And this is typical of all London boroughs, because by and large, people don't see food waste as a recyclable thing. Yeah,
and that's kind of, and sort of leading on from that, it's sort of a misconception that, oh, you know, it's organic material, it's fine, you know, what does it matter if it ends up in landfill? Well, the problem is if it does end up in landfill, it breaks down anaerobically. So that produces methane, which is a much more potent gas, greenhouse gas. And, you know, it can be used as a resource. If it's composted, it becomes a valuable product again. If it is incinerated like it would be in Hackney, well, then that kind of, because it's wet, it lowers the burn temperature of the incinerator, which makes it less efficient. And not that I'm condoning incineration, but if you're going to incinerate, at least do it as efficiently as possible. So there are different ways that you can compost. So there's home composting if you've got a space big enough to be able to do that, and you don't even really need that big a space. A council compost scheme, so obviously we have that here in Hackney. Only 9 London boroughs at the moment don't. However, as part of the Mayor's London Environment Strategy, it stipulates that all London boroughs should be doing this by 2020. So if your borough isn't doing this, then it's definitely worth a tweet or an email to your local councillor to find out why not, because this is actually something they should be doing, and it's incredibly convenient. If they don't, and in the meantime, there's also community compost schemes. So I don't know if the lovely Cordwainers can recommend anything like that. And then there's also wormeries. I know a couple of people with worms, including Daisy, although Daisy doesn't have the worms in her living room, like other people I know that do. And apparently they don't smell. Nice little.
They don't. As long as you look after them, you have to look after them. Don't give them too many onions.
So yeah, and then kind of apart from these 3 bins, I've also got a bag of old textiles that can't go to the charity shop. You know, socks which are more whole than sock and things like that. So I have a bag of waste textiles, and then I have a bag of electronic waste. You know, the WE. Trying to find something with that symbol on. Should be on most things. It's you can see, for example, on that. So that symbol there, where it's the don't put it in a bin, electronic waste. So these products should be disposed of in electronic waste bins, which they have around Hackney. I think Daisy's sharing some locations for those around the place. So those are separate things that I have on the go. And so once you've kind of separated all your waste, after about a week or so, you can give yourself a bin audit, which sounds lovely, but now you've got kind of clean waste. And if you want to do this in a really sort of professional way, then I highly recommend a guy called Daniel Webb. He's done this great big project called the Everyday Plastic Survey. And in fact, Dan collected all of his waste for a whole year and did a massive sort of survey on his waste. So he's now kind of condensed all of that information and all of that knowledge that he got from that. It was an amazing project, and he's now providing these kind of, it's the lockdown special, Everyday Plastic lockdown special. I think Daisy did it for the first round when it was open, and so that'll give you an insight into your plastic usage, and sort of you can see where it is that you're producing most of, and then so once you've done your audit, then the next week, you know, you can make a list of the top 3 things that you use the most. Or 5 things that you can avoid, and this is where you can now start to look for alternatives, and you know, also kind of try and move that waste upstream. So if you're buying something which is ending up in your residual waste bin, well then maybe the first step for you would be to find an alternative for that in a recyclable package product version of that, and then once you're happy with that, maybe then you find the package-free version or whatever. So we're just kind of trying to move waste out of your residual waste bin, your black sort of household waste, into your recycling bin, and then eventually out of that as well. And then this also kind of includes food waste as well. So I think there is something about focusing the mind. You know, if you know at the end of each week you're emptying a salad bag, you know, they sort of bought puff balls of salad into a bin each week, and you can see it there because it's in your food waste bin, then perhaps you think, okay, you know, I really should stop buying those. I'm not eating them. They're just being wasted week after week after week. And likewise with sort of portion sizes, you know, if you can see it there and you're like, oh, I'm taking out so much food waste each week, but half of it is plate waste, then you think, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be giving out I should give out smaller portions. You know, people can always have seconds, but let's do it that way. Let's not waste so much food that way. So yeah, knowing your enemy, knowing what it is you throw away is a really sort of great way of working out what you can do to reduce your rubbish and your waste and plastics. Use it up. So use it up, wear it out, upcycle, whatever it is, don't waste it. You know, and I think lockdown has been quite a good opportunity for a lot of people to kind of do a sort of home stock take of what they have, and, you know, discover that, wow, I didn't realize I had 47 bottles of shampoo and miniatures from hotels stolen around the world and so on. But now would be that time to use it up. And, you know, even I've sort of found stuff that I found a bottle of Johnson's baby oil from when my 7-year-old was a baby, that since I've run out of all other moisturiser, that is now my go-to. So it's just kind of using it up and not wasting what we have. You know, we're trying not to just mindlessly purchase new things. And for us, for Plastic-Free Hackney, I think what we need to we want to say really loudly and really so that everyone listens, is that going plastic-free should not be seen as a retail opportunity. You know, this is not a fluffy, you know, lovely aesthetic of minimalist, you know, utopias with white linen curtains and beautiful matching jars. That is not what going plastic-free is all about. And if anybody says it is, then run a mile. You know, it's not about buying new things. In fact, I'd be quite disappointed if anybody comes away from this and buys anything new ever again. You know, it's a fundamental shift in mindset, which we need to embrace going forward, with regards to how we consume. You know, currently we live in this very linear economy, where things just get thrown away and thrown away and thrown away. We're sort of moving to this recycling economy, where we're kind of recycling things, but we're not actually effectively recycling things. You know, it's very rare that a plastic bottle turns up on the shelf as a plastic bottle. It gets downcycled into things that are one step away from the bin. You know, it gets turned into thin plastic bags. It gets turned into drain pipes. It gets turned into park benches. A lot of park benches, I don't know why, especially TerraCycle. They love a park bench, TerraCycle. But what we want to be moving to is this sort of circular economy, where things remain in the system and we're using things to the full, you know, their full lifespan. I mean, effectively since World War II, we've been taught that we need to consume more. You know, before that, we kind of just, you know, we had furniture that was handed down and we sort of wore things and they, you know, they got worn out, and that's when we purchased a new item. After World War II, we had to be given a hard sell of how to change our mindset. It really didn't come naturally to us, but you know, people had things to sell and we were going to buy them, and that's kind of what's happened since then. And we are now just really, you know, ravaging the planet with our consumption habits. But also, you know, there's kind of, by using stuff up, there's a practical side as well. So whilst you use up a product, you know, is there a more sustainable product that you can find in the meantime, you know, that you can do a bit of research on? It also makes it less overwhelming, you know, instead of kind of going, I always find it frustrating, I read sometimes these articles, you know, like the BBC or whatever, and it's like, we challenge a family from the West Midlands to go plastic-free in 1 week. And by the end of the week, everyone's tearing their hair out and it's impossible. And it's because it's, you know, going back to step one, it's a journey. It's going to take a long time. But you want to make it less overwhelming for yourself. So whilst you are using up these products that you have in your home, you want to sort of take your time, research better alternatives. And then whilst I'm doing that, because I like to have an easy life, I also like to make sure that the products are produced ethically. They don't contain palm oil. There's a whole list of things then that come into the sustainability shopping wish list before things are bought. So yeah, simple swaps. This is my next tip. So this is kind of not reinventing the wheel. This is just your simple bog standard stuff that you buy week in, week out. But is there a swap you can make that would make it plastic free, or, you know, a better version? So, you know, we tend to be habitual shoppers. We go into a supermarket or, you know, usually go into a supermarket and we pick the thing that we always pick. It's on the shelf, we know where it is, we pick it out. But if you were just to stand back, you know, is there pasta that comes in a cardboard box instead of that plastic packet? You know, can you buy hand soap? You know, can you buy a bar of soap as opposed to a pump action, you know, bottled soap? Can you swap your single-use razor blade, plastic razor blade, for a stainless steel razor blade, a stainless steel safety razor? And ladies, moon cups. Cannot talk menstrual products enough. Yeah, I mean, menstrual products is a whole workshop in itself if you're interested. But you know, all these kind of alternatives to these single-use throwaway products. They also save you money. You know, they might cost more in the you know, as an in the first time you buy them. So a moon cup or a menstrual cup, they're roughly about £20. But you know, when you cover that over a life, and they're supposed to last £10. Sorry,
10 years.
10 years. 10 years. You know, they last 10 years. So, you know, once you sort of do the maths, then it's a saving. And all of these kind of reusable products will save you money. And also sort of what lockdown has, you know, not to be like, but you know, these products that I haven't had to buy because I have them. So for example, another product, cotton wool pads, you know, just for stuff. I've got reusable ones that I can just put in the washing machine. So it sort of meant that I haven't had to buy anything else. You know, I haven't had to buy any of these products during this period where it's been much harder. So that's another bonus too. Saving money and saving the planet. Doesn't get better than that. Sorry. So my next tip would be to shop unpackaged. I think once you do your bin audit, or it's probably quite clear already that most of our packaging, most of what we throw away comes from food. And the first thing to do would be to avoid the supermarkets if at all possible. I know it's quite hard, but this just gives an example of kind of, this was a survey done by Greenpeace, the Environmental Investigation Agency. So the first image on your left or right, I don't know if it mirrors the screen. Anyway, the white one is from 2018, and then it was from 2019. So you can see that there was a year where Iceland, the supermarket, made a big deal about they were going plastic free. They made a big song and dance about that. So they came top. So they ranked at 58%, which even at 58% isn't great. You can see in 2019, they've dropped all the way down, and Waitrose was at the top because they introduced one store in Oxford that had a sort of refillable counter. So you can see from this that really they're not doing anything. You know, they're all just tinkering around at the edges. The fact that they can go from really low, like Sainsbury's can go from the bottom to third place in a year, doesn't mean that they've made overwhelming strides in the right direction. You know, as anybody that's gone to a supermarket recently will see, nothing really looks different. But they come out with these little statements and they tinker around the edges, but really it's business as usual. And what's really worrying at the moment with the sort of everything that's happened in relation to COVID is that it's a time where plastic producers can sneak their plastic back in. You know, we've been working so hard to try and make these really small reductions, and now is a chance that big plastic polluters are coming in and go, but look how much safer it is. And I think Daisy can, the US plastics industry, they're using this as a time to really sort of lobby for use of more plastic, when in actual fact, plastics, COVID lasts on the surfaces longer than sort of other materials. So it's not safer, it's just another sort of myth. So if you can avoid the supermarkets, that's great. And supporting the high streets is one way to do that. You know, we all kind of bemoan the death of the high street, like, oh, it's such a shame we don't have a local high street. But if we don't shop there, how are they going to survive? You know, we have to support our local shops. And actually you can shop a lot more plastic free if you do. So a greengrocer, you can take your own bags. I've got these things called on your bags, which are just net bags that are essentially reusable produce bags. You know, your butcher or your fishmonger, you can take your own Tupperware. At the moment, I know it's all a bit, you know, they're a bit restricted, but generally you can. Even at my, yep, go.
No, I was just going to interject because I found the quote. So in America, the US Plastics Industry Association, which has the acronym Plastics, sent a letter to the US Department of Health urging them to make a public statement on the health and safety benefits seen in single-use plastics, despite recent research showing that COVID-19 can live on plastic surfaces far longer than others. The letter relies mostly on the same industry-funded research that has been touted by think tanks and plastic surrogates nationwide. So it's worth being very sceptical. I've posted links to a couple of articles about how long the coronavirus lives on different surfaces in the chat.
Thanks. So another way of sort of reducing the plastic is to if at all possible, shop in bulk stores. There's a brilliant website called zerowastenear.me, where you can put in your postcode and you're able to find shops near you that offer either sort of loose, unpackaged rice and lentils and that kind of stuff, pulses, or, from refilling your shampoo or your washing up liquid, to even sort of greengrocers. Anybody that offers a sort of zero waste option is generally on this website. And if you do know of somewhere that isn't on it, then if you email them, they'll add it to it, and so on. And it's growing. And I think, is it now global, Daisy, or is it?
I think it's definitely, I think it's Europe wide.
Okay.
I know their intention is to get to the world.
Over the world. So yeah, so that's a great resource, really, and great guys behind it. So yeah, but I mean, if you do have to shop at the supermarket, which many of us, don't have a choice, can you sort of try and shop smarter? So can you buy the biggest bag of pasta you can, thereby saving all these kind of little bits of plastic? Can you find the items that aren't packaged in plastic? And also remember your bags, those bags for life, which generally people aren't using for life. What is it?
One a week.
One a week is the average that people use a bag for life for. So remember your bags. These are kind of all the little things that we're supposed to be doing. So, I mean, if you really want, you can make a stand and leave all your packaging at the checkout. You could do a sort of personal unwrap and leave it all behind there and get the manager to come and clear it away. Again, not so much at the moment, but anyway. I mean, online shopping as well is a bit of a nightmare. I kind of gave up completely, although saying that, there are, that's kind of the big supermarkets, which have now got even worse because everything is in plastic and you can't give back the plastic bags and so on. But there are kind of other ways of shopping online, which I've now, sort of more traditional ways. So the milkman is a brilliant way of shopping online. You're getting your milk delivered in glass bottles, which are returnable. That's one way. There's also veg box schemes. There's Riverford, Avon and Cole are sort of big national ones, but then locally we've got growing communities here. There's also another one called Oddbox, which sort of rescues all the wonky and surplus veg that would have otherwise gone to waste, would have been ploughed back into fields. And generally these are, sometimes they have plastic in, but they're much less reduced and they're kind of doing a bit of good and supporting other things as well. So with the organic boxes, you're supporting kind of soil health, which is really important. Saving food waste is incredibly important, supporting local growers, all of these items, which in turn stops food miles. So these are really important ways that we can still online shop. So yeah, it's not all schlapping around the place. So next on my tip list would be to cook more. And I'm not suggesting that we will make pasties or whatever this lady is doing, because I've never done that before in my life. But, it's really kind of obvious that most of the kind of convenience food comes wrapped in plastic. It's almost, ready meals, takeaways, on the go food and drink, it's heavily swathed in plastic. And arguably it's that plastic packaging which has facilitated its creation. You couldn't have all of that stuff without the plastic. So to not have the plastic, you need to go back to cooking more. And it's kind of, on one hand, it's a chore and all the rest of it, but if you look at it in ways that it's enjoyable to cook for family and friends, they're getting a healthier meal at the end of the day. It's cheaper, it's much cheaper than takeaways and all of these things. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy at all. There's loads of gadgets that can help out. So even your freezer is a really useful sort of gadget when you think about it. You make double the quantity and you freeze it to ensure that you come home always to a nice home cooked meal. I think lockdown has meant that lots more people have been cooking, and I hope lots more people will stick to it. There's also sort of slow cookers, pressure cookers, batch cooking, all of these things can be used. And the same with a packed lunch. So like last night's leftovers are a brilliant source for lunches. You could even sort of incentivize yourself if it's really sort of a struggle, maybe put that money towards something. A treat every time you save money on buying that sandwich, you put it in a container. But you can sort of also, there are takeaway options which don't involve plastic. So there's, if anyone is local to Clapton, there's an amazing Vietnamese cafe called Hai Cafe, which I often rave about because it's just amazing. But they will accept your own containers. So if for a collection order, they'll fill it up. And then there's also another Hackney-based takeaway company called Dabba Drop, who all of their takeaways are in metal tiffins, which they also deliver on a bicycle, which is brilliant. And they'll take away your old tin and deliver you a new takeaway. So there are a couple of options, you know, when you're really sort of not feeling like cooking. But yeah, a good one is to remember your containers, take those to a takeaway place. And, you know, for them, they're saving money. So they're happy to take your container and you're not ending up with that sort of waste that generally then can't be recycled as well. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, it's an eco takeaway box because, you know, that's what they've been told, that's what they've been sold. But actually, once it's been contaminated with food waste, it's not recyclable. And actually, it's probably not recyclable in the first place anyway, because we just don't have the facilities to kind of to recycle that kind of waste. And then whilst you're in the kitchen, you can start making stuff yourself. And, you know, you don't have to be a witch, but I have found a load of products which I kind of, I assumed I had to be some sort of, you know, scientist in a lab coat to make. I didn't think it was possible. But Google is your friend. I mean, Google anything and you can make it yourself. But this isn't meant to be sort of, you know, making life hard for yourself, but sometimes it's quite satisfying and it is quite nice. So things I started making, which I now sort of wouldn't go back to buying, are deodorants. I make a deodorant, I make a lip balm, a moisturizer, and then a variety of sort of cleaning products like a window cleaner, a multi-surface cleaner, a kind of sieve-like bathroom cleaner, all with a couple of kitchen ingredients, which are incredibly cheap, and it means I don't have to go anywhere. So during lockdown, I didn't have to go anywhere either. If I didn't have any window cleaner, I would just knock up a batch of window cleaner. And we can actually, we ran workshops on these and everyone really enjoyed them. So we'll hopefully run those again. But we can also send out a few ingredients for a few of these products if you want to try making them at home. So, you know, as well as being plastic free, all of these products as well avoid a load of unnecessary chemicals that we're sort of pumping into our homes and bodies. You know, it's really odd to think, you know, on so many of these cleaning products that you buy in the store, they've got these real big warning products on them. You know, keep away from children, you know, or, you know, don't pour down the sink because it's going to kill aquatic life. So we keep them away from children to keep them safe, but then we mop our floors with them. And, you know, you've got the bottom of your feet are the most kind of, they're really porous, not porous, but absorbent or whatever. You know, you can absorb the things around you from your feet. So if you're wiping the floor in these chemicals and then your toddlers and your kids are crawling around the surfaces, or you've got bleach everywhere, these kind of things can be absorbed by your skin. So that kind of doesn't really make sense to me either. And it's also quite satisfying to be kind of self-sufficient in things as well, but maybe that's just the Brexit prepper in me. Yeah. So next, stop spending. I think sometimes I feel like this should be my #1 mantra, like to go plastic free. It's just, well, just stop buying it. Just stop buying the plastic. Just stop spending completely. You know, there's an amazing quote by a woman called Anna Lapper, which is, every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world that you want. And I think that's true. I think it's a really true sentiment. You know, in this time of muddled up politics and corporatist governments and all this kind of stuff, you know, sometimes it feels like our vote doesn't have much power, but these huge corporations that are kind of lobbying government and so on, and that have so much power, we can choose whether to spend our money with them or not. And so I just think, you know, whenever we avoid overly packaged products, whenever we refuse the pointless plastics and question retailers on bad practice, what we're doing is we're sending a very clear message that we don't want or need all of that plastic that's forced upon us. You know, there's also a huge amount of carbon embedded in those products, from their production to how they reach our stores, even if they are plastic free. There's also a social justice issue again. You know, who made that product? How much were they paid and in what conditions? You know, if it's too cheap, then the likelihood is that somebody somewhere across the world paid. You know, whether it was child labour or whatever, or just being paid way below the minimum wage, or being worked extremely long hours. You know, Amazon, I'm looking at you. It's just really important that we think, you know, it's not cheap for no reason. And so, you know, maybe we have to spend a bit more on something, but maybe that means we save up. But it means that we can sort of, we're not abusing somebody else somewhere else or abusing the planet for that product. And of course, then the disposal of the product. So, you know, the disposal of electronic products, if they're not disposed of correctly or they're being sold on the illegal market, again, is affecting people disproportionately in the global south and in countries where they don't have that kind of waste management system to deal with it. So it's really important to think how we dispose of our products as well, which leads on to the hierarchy of needs. So here, yeah, if you look kind of, as you can see, a pyramid, and the pyramid at the top of the pyramid is kind of what we should be doing the least, and at the bottom is what we should be doing the most. So next time when you need to make a big purchase, ask yourself whether you can borrow it from a friend, can you use what you already have, or can you actually just do without? You know, there was this, I should have written this down, there was a survey, or not a survey, a study, and actually it was about how to save money, and one of the key points from that was just not to online shop, because if you really need somewhere, you'll go out in your local community and you'll find somewhere and you'll buy it. But really, you know, we don't need this online shopping, we don't need this next day delivery, all of these kind of things are just making us spend more money, which we don't really need. So, you know, can we be more mindful when we do need to buy a product? Can we buy it secondhand? All of these things, or from a more ethical supplier, or can you buy a plastic-free alternative? The more we reduce our consumption of it, the less they'll demand for plastic there'll be, and the less will be produced. So obviously I have two small boys. I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old who love Playmobil. Like, Playmobil is the best thing in the whole world, and Lego. So just plastic, 100% plastic. But I kind of have a rule in the house where it's, you know, if I have to buy these products, I'm going to buy them secondhand. It's kind of no new plastic, because at least I'm saving them a journey from being thrown out or going into landfill, and then, you know, we hopefully look after them and we're able to pass them on to someone else. And here I highly recommend eBay. eBay is your friend for buying all of these products. In fact, anything you want, you can buy on eBay, and it's pretty much like new and a much reduced price. eBay is just, honestly, next time you want to buy anything, check it out on eBay first. I'm not getting any cut from eBay, I promise. And finally, so this is my last tip. It's to get involved. As individuals, we've got huge amounts of power, but that really comes into its own when we act together. So what we need to do is look what's happening in our local community. Is there a local group, not just saying Plastic-Free Hackney, but is there a Surfers Against Sewage group? Is there a Friends of the Earth group? Is there a Greenpeace group? Is there a group that, you know, allies to what you, or how you want to shape the world? Can you join in with them? You know, for an hour or so a week, could you volunteer your skills, or attend a local litter pick, or a supermarket mass unwrap? You know, could you add your voice to campaigns demanding change, whether it's signing a petition or writing to an MP? Or, you know, is your place of work a complete plastic disaster zone? You know, can you be that person who says enough is enough and speaks to someone about making changes, you know, whatever they might be, but just a positive change? Because the likelihood is a load of other people are feeling the same way, but there's this mindset that it's someone else's problem to solve. Someone, you know, if it's not being done, there's a reason, or someone else will get on that. But actually, you know, what I've learned is that if you're not the person to say it, no one will say it, but people will come behind you. You know, complacency will lead to politicians and businesses hoping that we've forgotten all about the plastics crisis and revert to the bad old days, especially now in this kind of COVID times. You know, it's really, they're looking for any excuse to kind of water down environmental protections. You know, and it really is up to all of us to create a plastic-free world for future generations to be able to enjoy. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Those are my top tips. I hope you enjoyed them. And if anybody has any questions, or please put them in the chat. This is where it's slightly annoying because it would be great to have people feeding back, but such is the webinar. I'm going to come out of this.
So we've got loads of, the chat has been incredible. Well done, the chatters. You know, conversation's only as good as the people involved in it. So we've got quite a few questions, and I'm just going to bring up some of them, Bettina, and then kind of go back through the chat to see other ones that I've missed. We've got, I'll start off with a very good question from Ajay, which is, what advice would you have to a student with a limited budget who cannot afford the higher priced items with less plastic?
So if you're talking about sort of maybe food items, things like that, then I'd really start to look into places like your local markets. Generally, they're much cheaper than the supermarkets, and they're unpackaged. So things like that. And then, you know, so bulk stores, for example, they're kind of, and some of them are expensive, like some of them are more expensive, but some of them aren't. So I would look at, you know, so for example, in Hackney, you've got bulk stores such as Get Loose, which is in Hackney City Farm, and you've got Food for All on Cazenove Road in Stoke Newington, and these are non-profit organisations. So the costs of their products, the only reason they might seem more expensive is because they generally sell organic products. But if you compare the organic to the organic, they're cheaper. Another way actually of sort of shopping online is if you can band together with a lot of people, like maybe you're in a house share, there's food wholesalers like Suma, S-U-M-A. So you can group together and you can actually buy in wholesale. So there will be plastic packaging, but you're buying, you know, 10 kilo bags of pasta, which you can then, you know, it's just one big lot. It's much cheaper, and then you split that amongst yourselves. And then for all other products, I mean, I would shop secondhand, charity shops, eBay again, you know, all of this, it's much cheaper. I hope everyone can hear. I've got a really worrying.
Yes, I think everyone can hear. Sorry, I'm just posting.
Yes, and growing food at home, also brilliant. I've got, my front garden is my allotment.
Right, now what else? Oh, there's been a fair bit of chat about shampoo bars, people loving them, people feeling less committed, quite a lot of loving them, and the relationship with drain blocks. Apparently people have been experiencing blocked drains with their shampoo bars.
Because of shampoo bars?
Yeah, the shampoo bars. My top tip would be lots of boiled water. Boiling water.
I mean, I imagine it's not the shampoo bar in itself that's blocking the thing, but the hair. But I mean, so you can use citric acid as a drain unblocker, bicarb. I think it's on our, when we send out our homemade cleaning products thing, that is one of them. But yeah, I mean, occasionally I get a blocked drain and it's just a rubber glove and pulling out a lot of my hair. It's grim, but sorry.
We've got a very interesting comment from somebody called Olivia P, who said, I worked in a charity shop and half the things that people donated ended up in the bin. My team and I felt that our little shop was being used as the community's local landfill, with people donating broken, soiled, incomplete, etc. items that would never consider by themselves, and sometimes getting angry if we kindly ask them instead to dispose of the items. This leads to charity shops being completely overwhelmed, and we would end up throwing away a lot more items than we would have done due to the sheer pressure of maintaining a workable space. Donating responsibly is an important part of reducing our waste that is sometimes seldom talked about. Sometimes throwing something in the bin is more responsible than giving it to a charity shop and hoping that they will have the resources to dispose of it consciously, because most of the time we don't, unfortunately. It's a very...
No, totally. And I think this is also what happens with recycling. So there's a term called wish cycling. So you've bought it and it's kind of like you want it to be recyclable because you don't want to throw it, so you throw it in the recycling bin. You're wish cycling, you're hoping that it will go to the recycling man up in the sky. And I think people do that with charity shops as well, which is, it's just grim, you know. So this is why, so for example, it's like I have my bag of waste textiles, you know, I'm not going to, you know, charity shops are not a bin. You know, you are, you know, also a community service in a way. Yeah, donate responsibly. I think if you can't, I think that, and this is also, this kind of harks back to what I was saying before about how we've just become so, we just buy. You know, we just consume. And we don't give a thought to what we consume. And if it breaks, we just don't care because it was probably so cheap in the first place. So it's really like considering actually what you're buying in the first place. You know, buy a better quality item in the first place and look after that item. You know, why are we filling our homes with this sort of cheap rubbish that breaks? And then we think, oh, I mean, I don't know why we put it in a charity shop then. It's just bizarre. But, you know, what we need to think is start by thinking what we're buying in the first place. We need to buy better, we need to buy less, and we need to buy because we genuinely need that product, not just because, oh, I fancied it, or, you know, whatever. It's all this frippery that is just, you know, terrible.
I've got two other questions. One of them is from, I hope I'm going to pronounce your name right, Ava. Plastic is one of the most publicly disliked materials, but also one of the most utilised. Could you see this attitude change by applying a circular economy model to plastic?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the major kind of, so there's a legislation that hopefully is coming in called the Extended Producer Responsibility, and this would see that producers of plastic would be responsible for their disposal, so they would have to pay towards their disposal. And once we see that, then we will see, you know, the whole market will change. It will just be a total game changer in how companies will start selling their products. You know, Coca-Cola may go back to selling glass bottles and reuse, you know, in returnable glass bottle schemes, things like that. Because once the producers, once those polluters, which effectively companies like Coca-Cola are, once they're made to pay for that pollution and it comes off their bottom line, which is all they care about, they're soon going to make changes. At the moment, they're completely free to just do whatever they want to do. So I hope with legislation that comes in like that, then we will start to see a diversity of materials. But I think also what's really important, and what we kind of really try to sort of get the message across, that it's no good replacing one disposable product for another, because again, it's this disposability, it's this throwaway is just not useful whatsoever. So we need to be moving towards reusable products. That's kind of where we need to be going. We need to ensure that there are refill points in every supermarket. You know, all the fruit and veg is unwrapped, that this just becomes the norm, and that we're used to going out with our, you know, whatever it is that we need to take shopping with us to refill, that becomes the norm. That needs, you know, that needs to happen, basically. I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, and I was also going to add the point of the fact that within law, we also need to make this change. And Friends of the Earth have put in the chat, have got a very good petition where they are campaigning government about all different elements of plastic and environmental waste change, whereby all plastic products that are being made are legally bound to include a percentage of recycled plastic, because until that happens, because currently virgin plastic is a lot cheaper for manufacturers to use than recycled plastic, so there's no financial incentive for them to use it at the moment. Right. What else? Yes, so we've got somebody called Alexandra who says she's guilty of wish cycling. Any tips for recycling symbols, numbers, how to identify what is recyclable?
So this is a major issue with the recycling system and these kind of numbers and these symbols that we have. So the problem is these numbers and symbols are, they're not anything really to do with recycling. It's kind of a weird, it's like a manufacturing thing. So just because it's got a little recycling, you know, symbol around it doesn't mean it's recyclable. I'm trying to find a product with the major culprit of that people get confused by. I don't really have. looking around.
I haven't got anything around me.
Looking around. We've had some props. There is a symbol that, oh yeah, this. Okay, so this, can you see this symbol here? This is a major bad symbol. So this means that in certain places, like in mainland Europe, that means that the producer has paid a certain amount towards the disposal of that product. However, in the UK, that symbol is totally meaningless, like totally meaningless. So it's really frustrating when you get major, you know, you get like Nestle, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, you get these huge multinational, multi-billion-pound corporations, and they just, and it's, I mean, cynically, I think they do it on purpose, but you know, you think, oh, they just can't be bothered to change their packaging, let's just put it on our UK packaging. But I think because so many people believe that to mean it's recyclable, it adds a sort of air of green to them. And so it's really confusing. So completely disregard, if you see that product, if you see that symbol, completely ignore it. There is a, so I think it's wrap that have got the, they've tried to, I'm trying to find something else now. Something else. So generally where you get the symbol where it says local recycling facilities, you know, generally recyclable, check with your local recycling. I don't know if you see that symbol. That's kind of, they're the clearest ones for the UK. Other than that, the numbers aren't really clear either. So like I said, the best thing to do is to check your council's website, your local council's website. And generally kind of, and what's on their website, it'll kind of show you in terms of milk cartons are recyclable, you know, Pringles packets aren't. That's kind of the guide to follow, because it's very confusing when you get down to the numbers. It's not as simple as the numbers.
It is very confusing. And actually talking to Hackney and the head of the recycling team, they don't know which numbers are always being accepted, because it's often changing. So it's, rather than relying on the numbers, it's better to actually go to your council's website and find out from them what it is that they're saying they're accepting.
And that also fluctuates depending on, you know, because all of these things, it's all a market, it's all a global market, you know. Like if anybody remembers, is it Trading Places? Pork bellies. I mean, you know, plastics is another one. It's just it's a commodity. And so generally kind of HDPE plastic, so that's your milk bottle cartons, generally they've got a high value because they can be recycled into, I don't know, drain pipes. They're better, and that PET, so like water bottles, things like that, they're generally of higher value. But you know, these flimsy plastics, films, you know, mixed materials like crisp packets, all of these are so expensive to recycle, because fundamentally everything can be recycled. It's just whether the cost allows for that to happen. So yeah, so generally there's just no point in doing them, and they will be incinerated. So they're kind of the ones to avoid first, really, those sort of flimsy films.
We've got a question from Nicole, who's got a nice point I can relate to. Hi, I'm 17 years old and I'm really passionate about this subject. I'm continuously trying to convince my parents to buy plastic-free products, but they seem to find these products more expensive or are discouraged because they're not very available. I ended up buying some things like reusable pads and a reusable razor online with my own money, but I don't really afford to buy much more. Do you have any recommendations on how I can convince my parents to buy more sustainable products, please? I would say try and I guess this is only, well, it doesn't have to be if you're living with at the moment. So last week we did a screening for a film called The Story of Plastic, and I think that the thing that motivates change has to be like a click within someone's own psyche, and like kind of badgering at them, or I'm not, sorry, Nicole, I'm not suggesting that you're badgering your parents, but you know, like always trying to persuade people and getting very passionate in your argument, I find can be quite counterproductive, because I get quite emotional about it. And actually, in some ways, it's just about asking them to kind of sit down and watch a film with you, and then they can really you can kind of start that journey with them about understanding why that thing is so important to you. So there's a film called The Story of Plastic, and if you go on Eventbrite and have a little Google, an Ecosia, if you have a look on Eventbrite for current screenings of the Story of Plastic, you can watch it for free in your living room, and it's a brilliant film, and it's very factual, and I think it's sort of those facts that help people start making the shift about why they can incrementally start to make that change. I don't know, Bettina, you've got anything to add to that?
I mean, it is hard when you're, when it's someone else's, when other people have different priorities to what you have. So, your parents obviously aren't that bothered, and they just see that it's a bit more money to spend it on that, and they've got priorities in a different, a field. So it is really hard, and it's amazing you're sort of spending your own money and trying to make the effort. I think it's kind of, it's hard, it's a tough life for living with your parents. They never do what you want them to do. I mean, if you can somehow, I don't know, show them that actually it's not cheap, because I think also that's another issue with bulk stores, is that I think everybody that's been to a bulk store the first time has had that shock where they've just kind of got their bag and they've gone like that on a dispenser and it's filled, and then you take it to the counter and it's like, that'll be £7 for that rice piece, and you're like, this is so expensive. But actually it's because you've bought like 5 kilos of, you've bought like a ridiculous weight. So that could be an interesting kind of comparison to do, to be like, is it actually more expensive, or are you just, if you look at it at sort of a quantity level, or if you was buy 250 grams from the bulk store, it would probably be the same price or whatever. So maybe you could try that and just have a look. And then it's, I don't know, I find that, okay, I do, I'm not going to lie, that there are certain things that do cost more, but I think I prioritize those, and because I spend less money on other things, the disposables that I no longer use, it's kind of if that's kind of a plus in the bank, then I'm willing to take the minus in the bank, because at the end of the day it levels out. So I don't know if you could have a chat with them about that, but good luck.
We've got 2 questions that are quite closely linked. So we've got one which is, question from Nikki, what about compostable bags versus plastic bags? Compostable isn't recyclable, whereas plastic is? ?
So we didn't really touch on compostables, which, we're not fans, are we, Daisy? We're not fans,
and actually I'm going to post a little film in the chat as well of a nice short film, I think made by Greenpeace, just quite quickly in 3 minutes, just tells you, debunks all the myths. Basically, if it sounds like it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
Yeah, and so using, so for example, with Hackney, they provide a compostable bag for your green waste, your food waste, and they're kind of a cornstarchy thing, and you can feel that they do break down, but they will still go to an anaerobic digester, and they will still be picked out. If they haven't sort of completely disintegrated, they will be picked out of the waste stream and incinerated, because I don't know, I guess they don't break down quick enough, the anaerobic digester. So if you're buying stuff, what I find really frustrating when I see, for example, dog walkers, and they've got but they think they're doing the right thing. They've got a biodegradable, compostable poo bag. But if you're a responsible dog owner, you're putting that in the bin anyway, and that's being incinerated. So, what would be a better alternative is to look at how else you could do that. Like, could you use the best way to use plastic is to reuse it as many times as possible. So if you have any sort of bag at home, that's the best way to then use again. So I kind of feel like I'm on a one woman campaign against black bin bags, because they're just like they're the peak disposable plastic product that we buy. We buy black bin liners to to literally throw away. So I mean, talking about saving money, but we spend money on weird products like this, which we literally throw away. So it's kind of re-looking at what's around our home. So instead of buying these kind of compostable products which are at a premium and that take away, they're still fundamentally a plastic. There's still a long chain of polymers that are made up chemically exactly like plastics, but the oil, the fossil fuel, has been removed and it's been replaced with a plant-based oil. But if you think about it, that you have to set aside land for. You know, so you're setting aside land that could be used for growing crops. You know, I don't know, in worst case scenario, you've cut down a forest so that you can grow a product that you can then make a plastic bag out of. So they're just completely, I just don't think they're the solution or they're the way forward. It's just replacing a disposable with another. But, you know, if you are going to buy a plastic bag or, you know, bin bags, the best thing to do is to buy recycled plastic ones, because at least then they've kind of been through the system. But, you know, I tend to use everything, you know, so bin liners at home, you know, the inside of cereal packets. The inside of cereal packets are amazing for everything. They can be freezer bags, they can be, you know, you can put your shoes in them when you pack your suitcase. You know, I think when you stop buying things, it's kind of, it snowballs into kind of buying less. So you stop buying the bin bags, but then you need to find something to replace the bin bags. So then you find something in your home, the big bag that you received online shopping in. Okay, well, you cut that open and that's a ginormous bag. So that's, you know, your bin liner. So your waste just kind of snowballs, but the wrong way round, because you're thinking of other things in your house to use instead of throwing them away. You know, everything becomes a useful function for something else. I think I digressed there, but I think that's
and that leads on to a question from the Hackney Real Nappy Network. Hello. Hi. Who have their own webinar tomorrow.
Yes.
If you want to, Hackney Real Nappy Network, if you want to put a link to your webinar in the chat, please do. Their question is there an industrial composting facility planned in Hackney or anywhere for all these new compostable disposable items, e.g. vegware, or is it sadly never going to be an option?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is no option for those, and that's what's really frustrating. And, you know, vegware, their answer to this is, well, you know, the aeroplane was designed before we had airports, like, because that went really well, didn't it? You know, yeah, there's no planned facilities for a massive industrial unit in Hackney. You know, where are we gonna put this? Hackney Marshes? You know, we've got no space to do it. We send all of our food waste to, I think it's in Milton Keynes, the anaerobic digester, and they don't accept all these vegware products at all. They need to be in a very specialised facility. I think there are maybe 1 or 2 in the country. You have to be able to collect them in quantity to make it worthwhile taking it to these places. You've also got, this is what I find frustrating in coffee shops when they say, oh, it's an eco cup. Like, why don't you want it? It's not an eco cup. Because what happens, if I'm at home with that eco cup, for example, where do I put it? If I put it in my recycling bin, it's not recyclable. I can't put it in my food waste bin because it's not suitable to be composted in their anaerobic digester. So I put it in my residual bin. So what's the point? That's just going to be incinerated. And then, you know, you think about it on the go, again, where most people are having these disposable products, these vegware, you know, that's what they're facilitated for. They're facilitated for on the go food and drink. And so you're on the go and you've got a bin in the street, you know, hopefully you put it in a bin. So you put it, generally the bins are just going to go to the incinerator. And, you know, and then depending, sometimes it's so in Hackney, you get the double bins, the recycling and the incinerator. Well, if you put vegware or any of that into your recycling side of it, you've contaminated the recycling because it's not recyclable. So there's just no, you know, we're just not there at all. You know, we struggle to get people to put things in the bin. We struggle to get people to put things in the recycling bin. So, you know, vegware is just another product to throw in the mix.
There's quite an interesting example, which is vegware promote, and they're not the only producers of compostable plastics, but they are a very prominent one. And the way that they've designed their product is so that it works best in a closed loop environment. So if you're in one building facility, say it's like a university or a hospital or something, and then you're using the vegware item, you're eating your lunch, you're drinking a drink, and then you put it in the special vegware bin, and then vegware or one of their contractors come and collect those specific items to then take to their anaerobic digester, which in itself, you then got the transport of this single-use disposable product, which you're running into a problem there. However, even if that was all to go perfectly, it doesn't, because to a lot of fanfare in last year in 2019, the government said that in Westminster they were going to switch all their government buildings at Parliament to using vegware to cut down on single-use plastics. And within the 7 months that that was piloted, and I don't know if it's still running, every single one of those collections had to go to the incinerator through contamination. And that's an example where everybody in those buildings knew what they were doing, and still, you know, as a sort of flagship, it wasn't working out. So it's really it's really not a solution. It's also worth thinking about, you then run into the problem about how those materials are being produced. So things like cornstarch, that is quite often one of the materials that people use for the production of the bioplastics. That's corn that's often grown in America in really huge industrialized farming mechanisms, well, massive productions. It's very water intensive corn. I don't know if I've tried growing sweet corn, didn't water enough, didn't happen. It's very water intensive. It's also, you've also set aside a lot of land use that uses lots of pesticides to make sure that it's growing sufficiently, fertilizers in the soil. So you've got all of those questions involved in whether that's a good use of your resource. The companies that are primarily investing in the production of corn for bioplastics are closely related and often kind of have they're often kind of subsidiary companies, oil and gas producers, because they know that this is the way that the industry is heading. So it's altogether something to be extremely wary of. I want to do a little bit more investigation into that, but yeah, it's a no-go.
I've just launched the polls, by the way, guys, if you would like to fill those in. Forgot about that. So
oh yes, they're popping along.
Yeah. I've noticed a comment which it won't let me see your full name. If I click on that, maybe. Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca. A woman after my own heart here. You said, I've lost you now. I have items of clothing, books, etc. that are still usable and in good condition. I often sell them myself online using eBay and Depop, as I feel like they're more likely to be used by the buyer rather than sitting for a long time in an already overwhelmed charity shop. I then donate any money I make to charity. This may be a solution for some of you concerned about overwhelming charity shops. Yeah, completely agree with you. Like, you know, there's a woman, I think she's called Rosalind. She's an independent, she's an independent to be the London mayor. She's putting herself up for election. And she made a really interesting point that, you know, if you think about all the carbon stored in our homes, in those unused products that we have, and, you know, so people are buying stuff because they're buying it new, whereas they'd be happy to buy it secondhand and we've got it sort of hidden away in our cupboards. So yeah, I completely agree, you know, selling stuff, you know, that is usable, and then donating the money is one way of doing it, or just, you know, recouping costs, or, you know, putting that towards a reward for something else, or, you know, all these kind of things. I think it is a, you know, that's kind of, it's kind of circular economy. That's it in practice. You know, we look after what we've got. When we don't need it, we're then able to pass it on to someone else, whether that's, you know, with a financial incentive or whatever. But yeah, it just means we're keeping these products in the loop, out of landfill, yeah, and ensuring that carbon that is stored within the products that's gone into making it is being utilised to its full potential. Daisy.
Does anyone have any other questions? I don't know quite how you reply to that.
Yeah.
And is the poll scrolling through? Will someone say, are you on question number 1, or can you carry on going?
I don't know how it.
Yes. Okay. So Library of Things. Library of Things is a brilliant thing. So when Bettina was talking about spending less, one of the things that I popped in the chat was about 2 really, really useful resources. One, the app Nextdoor, which is really great and limits to just kind of your immediate surroundings, so you don't get pelted with masses and masses of emails. And it's a really good way of you know, just asking if you need to borrow a ladder, or I don't know, you've got a drill that you can lend, or whatever it is. People are only getting 1 question from the poll.
Oh really? Oh, let me try and figure that out. I saw a message from Adam Biggs. Would he be able to retype his message? I think we might have missed a question.
Yes. So okay, I've got he runs a community business called Naked Larder in Herne Hill. It's a home-based click and collect, providing low-cost food and cleaning product refills. They've cut out all packaging waste to the end user and have very little waste at retailer level, almost no plastic, mainly paper and cardboard. Our way of shopping is different and very cost effective in comparison to many of the other zero waste shops. Would we allow you to share your model here? Share away, Adam. They are looking for partners to start up in other areas. So some of our listeners may be interested. I guess, Adam, if you want to pop your email address into the chat, then that might be the best way of people knowing.
So I'm going to have to go through each polling question and set it. So I've now put question 2. I'll give everyone a few seconds to fill that in, and then I'll move on to question 3. So I see there's a message from Louise Greener on how you can get involved with us, volunteering opportunities, etc. Always happy for volunteers. We are a volunteer run group. So yeah, we're looking for volunteers for all sorts of things. You know, from sort of one-off events, you know, for just volunteering a couple of hours to help at an awareness event, to helping out with litter picks, to helping us, you know, work out the tech for a Zoom webinar. You know, every single possible thing you can think of, we are looking for help. And we have got our roles, which are they up on the website?
Not sure.
Oh, I'm launching the polling now. Sorry. Sorry, Daisy.
Are our roles up on the website? I can have a little look.
If not,
if
not, we can
send us an email.
Yeah, if you can send us an email. And actually, we'll send out some resources after this as well. We can send out a sort of package to everyone. So, yeah, but there are always volunteering opportunities. We're more than happy to have everyone help us volunteer. Thank you.
Okay, so for anyone who's interested in Adam's refill in Herne Hill, Naked Larder, the information is now in the chat.
And there are lots of other, so Trash Nothing uses lots of free cycle groups. And there was somebody, was it something else? Something I read earlier. Another sharing group. But yeah, all those sharing groups, everything is brilliant.
Are you okay if we share your tips, advice on our social media platforms? Yes, definitely. Definitely. Are we all right with that?
Of course.
Yeah, share it. Share the good information. Would we consider doing these webinars on a monthly basis? Yeah, Yes, and in fact, so we've got funding from Hackney Council to do this webinar. So one thing that you could do would be really helpful in the chat. If you like us to do more, you could pop in a little, this was the most exciting webinar I've ever been to. It's changed my life. And then we can send that quote to Hackney Council saying, look, the people say they want more.
And another thing, talking about Hackney Council, which this feels sort of quite a pertinent webinar to be discussing it in, is that, so I don't know if anybody hasn't seen, anyone has seen that from the start of the next financial year, so I'm guessing April next year, Hackney Council will be moving to a fortnightly bin collection. So that will mean, so this is kind of it's a way to push up recycling. Because what Hackney are finding is that no matter how much they try and convince people to recycle, coerce them to do it, there's still so much recyclable waste that is going to incineration. So this move to fortnightly bin collections is in the hope that it will drive up recycling levels. So what will happen is you'll have your food waste and your recycling waste collected every week, but your like black bag waste, but you're not going to buy black bags anymore. Your other waste will be collected once a fortnight. So yeah. Well, so Cordwainers have said yes, they're worried about that, as living on estate as houses around us will dump more of their rubbish in our large bins. I mean, I don't know. I think I don't know whether houses, yeah, because it's not estates aren't changing to fortnightly, but houses are. I mean, you know, this is not like a new thing in terms of the country. Like other, you know, places in Wales only have their bins collected like once every 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I think there will be a transition period where unfortunately you will get, you know, people that, you know, the sort of more unscrupulous people in the community that will do that. But, you know, the idea is that that it's just to boost recycling, you know, and so if you have got a lot of waste, but it's very rare, you know, and people that have got much larger households and are producing waste, they will be given a larger size bin once they've been assessed.
Yeah. So
the thought is that, you know, a 140 litre dustbin, that's a lot of rubbish to produce in 2 weeks. And I think the fly tipping, that's kind of a separate thing. And, you know, that happens anywhere.
It's interesting because the residual waste thing is a real problem. Residual waste is the fancy word for your black bin. Basically, it used to be until the Tory Lib Dem coalition in 2010, government used to be able to fine people for not recycling, and they can't do that anymore. So if people don't recycle anything, there's actually nothing that a council can do about it. So it sort of leaves it in this weird situation where it's only an opt-in, and we are massive, you know, I mean, recycling is incredibly important, but it's also utterly not the answer. But if we're not even recycling, you know, you kind of have to start at the lowest, not the lowest common denominator, but you just kind of got to bring everybody along and make sure that everybody for the start is recycling, and that they're not all sending, you know, valuable resources to be burnt. So you then kind of leave councils in quite a hard position, because it's like, well, if you can't fine people for not recycling, well then what can you do? You can make it harder for them not to be recycling, which is the idea about limiting their black bin, their residual collections, whilst the recycling collection carries on being once a week. But there is then, you know, then there's a question of how much of that recycling material is going to then be correctly processed, you know, whether people are just going to be putting it in dirty. Well, we hope that people are going to learn to care, but you know, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, but I think, you know, as a group, we support it. Yeah, and there definitely will be teething issues with it, but hopefully, sort of, I mean, the whole of Wales can't be wrong. They got on board, you know. It's kind of, you know, let's just all be a bit more Wales. Yeah, it's,
I think, you know, this is kind of the stick. They've tried a lot of carrot methods, and now this is the stick method. And, you know, it'll also, you know, it'll reduce kind of emissions, you know, transport emissions from as well. So, you know, there are other sort of positives to come from it. So, yeah, hopefully, and, you know, hopefully we, you know, we're, you know, as an organisation, we're thorough, you know, this is, you know, part of one of the reasons, a good reason for this talk is kind of to try and, you know, teach people how to reduce their waste further, so that we are ready for this change that will happen.
So there's a question about, what did Wales do? Wales went from having weekly residual waste and recycling waste collections to once every 3 weeks, and people have got on board. I mean, it's obviously different if you're in rural Wales to if you're in very urban Hackney, but the point of it is that it's about habit change, education, habit change. You know, yeah, it might be a bit more of a pain for people, but it's stuff that we have to do. What else have we got happening here? Should you wash your plastic recycling? You're using clean water if you wash plastic recycling. Yeah, that is a good point. Your plastic recycling should be clean in that, like, so say for example, or all of your recycling should be clean. So I don't know, if you've eaten half a can of baked beans and you've still got half the can in, and you've decided you're not going to eat it all and you're throwing that, like, that puts you as a, like, who's going to, like, now we've gone into food waste as well. But your recycling should be empty and rinsed with cold water.
Yeah,
not like a scrub, but, you know, I think I just stick all mine at the side of the sink, and then when there's enough, I just give it a quick rinse and it goes in the recycling bin. Yeah,
and a rinse with, you know, your washing up water, that kind of thing. Just it doesn't have to be food standard safety cleaned, but just rinsed generally. I mean, it'll be washed in the recycling process, but yeah, kind of big bits of food. Yeah, that's it. Nothing. Never use hot water.
We've got a comment from S. I hardly have any residual waste, about 1 carrier bag worth a week, and yet I'm always being told to use the black bin, which seems like such a waste. If we had 3 weeks collection, at least it would fill up a bit more. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's another also very important point about never ever put your recycling in a black bin liner. If you put your recycling in a black bin liner, it will go straight to the incinerator. So always make sure that you're using the, you know, transparent council provided. And then
and this, so sorry, the comment from S about being told to use the black bin bag, is that kind of as what, like put your carrier bag of waste inside a massive bin? Because actually that's not a, you know, it's not like a policy. It's not, you know, there's nowhere that has said you have to use these black bin liners. You can, you know, so my waste, you know, so I create also very little waste, but also, so I have a bin in the kitchen. So my setup is that I have a bin in the kitchen, like a plastic box or whatever, and whatever bag I have, I for some reason used to get, before I had a no junk mail sticker, those kind of, basically I use whatever bag I can find to line my bin, my residual waste. But because all my food waste goes into the food waste bin, and all my recycling goes into my recycling, so what ends up in my residual waste is kind of clean, so I don't empty it once a week. So I've had
not stinky.
Yeah, it doesn't smell. So my bin has been in my kitchen for 2 months. So you don't sort of have to empty it. That's where all the food recycling and everything comes out, and allows you to sort of keep that rubbish within your home for longer, because it's not going to smell or do anything like that. So yeah, I mean, you know, I sometimes, you know, put rubbish, you know, I line bathroom bins, this is to S, I line bathroom bins with cereal packets, and then, you know, they just take them out. It's, maybe sometimes they leave them in, but it doesn't bother me that it's,
they won't on my street. If you just like use a carrier bag and leave it in the bin, they won't take it out.
Odd. It's a question for John Burke. We will ask the council about this because, yeah, it's definitely not an obligation. I haven't bought a black bin liner. I mean, I'm saying 10 years at least. You know, it's I don't know, yeah. We will ask, we'll find out.
So if you're in Hackney, a good person to badger in a polite way is the councillor John Burke, and I'll put his Twitter handle on here because he spends a lot of time on Twitter, and so it's a good way of actually getting things done, is having a polite prod.
Yeah. Oh, you're not in Hackney. Where else have I? So my mother, I don't think she's ever bought a bin liner in her life. She's in Barnet. I mean, so that's now like 40 years of no black bin liners. They've never had an issue. Islington wasn't an issue. Yeah, I don't know. Picky bin men, unfortunately. Maybe.
I think actually it's going to be less of an issue when it goes to the fortnightly bin collection, because I think then we're going to the wheelie bins.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that they do, kind of getting really into the bin detail here, but how in Hackney they currently empty your bin is they take the bag out, pile it up with all the other bags. So I can see that if they've got lots of small bags, that's going to make their job more annoying and slower. But when the fortnightly bin collection comes in, the whole borough is being provided with black wheelie bins. So then I would imagine you can use whatever bag you want to.
We'll stop talking about bins now. I mean, a lot of time in my life talking about bins. I'm going to whiz through this polling. There's 3 more questions in the polling.
Okay, and here is I was going to put, for anyone who's on Twitter, I'm going to put on John Burke's, there he is. So, you know, it's always good to pester your councillor.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Does anyone, please, if you have posted a question that you think we have ignored, it's not deliberate, or a comment that you want us to address, please then repost it now. There's no censorship.
So S has also said she'd like to do an online making her own things. So potentially that is an idea that we're talking about, doing an online course where we may sort of hygienically deliver you the materials and then you would make them at home sort of with us on the webinar. It's an idea.
Yeah.
Space.
I think if we were to do that, then we'd probably have interactive heads. So you wouldn't be you wouldn't be delegated, you wouldn't be relegated just to the chat. You'd like to have a face as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of how to encourage blocks of flats to recycle and compost? It's a real problem in Camden. 3/4 of the residents are flats. It's a real problem in Hackney too. The rate of recycling in the estates and flats above shops is much lower than it is with houses on streets.
Yeah. A variety of reasons. It's kind of, flats, smaller spaces, so to have all their rubbish, maybe the kitchens there's no space for having multiple bins, then there's the whole kind of, I now have to go walk all the way to the other side of the estate to put my rubbish in the bin. It is a problem. But I think if you can somehow sort of encourage people to take it on board, to take ownership of the issue. I think, I talked to quite a few people that kind of go, it's really annoying in my block of flats, like there's always somebody that puts, messes up the recycling and all the rest of it. And I kind of say to them, well, have you done anything? Have you spoken to these people? Have you kind of made it your thing in a way? Like, could you put a note, or could you just knock on each person's door and just find out what it is? I mean, you're unlikely to get anybody that's sort of rude or aggressive. They might not just be interested. But if you kind of say, like, I'm trying to make this block of flats better for everyone by ensuring that we don't have a rat problem because of the overflowing bins or whatever it is, if kind of people take ownership of their space, and you know, they start to learn neighbors' names, and it's kind of, you know, if you kind of create a community, then that feeling of ownership and community can sometimes kind of override those issues of, oh, I'm just going to, you know, if you feel like you're just completely detached from a place, you just dump it anywhere because you don't care. So if you can take ownership and make people care about where they live, I think that would help. And maybe some people don't know, you know, maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, they might not understand the recycling system, or they might not understand where the bins are. You know, I think there is something to be said for people within their own communities, whether that's an estate, you know, a block of flats, whatever it is, kind of doing that themselves, and kind of seeing if there's a solution that they can do just by talking to people and just by doing things like that.
We've got a question that I missed earlier about any tips for some plastic-free gardening. Plastic-free gardening.
So using everything multiple times. So growing things from, well, this is really for cordwainers, isn't it? We need cordwainers on the webinar. You can, I saw the other day, you can buy sort of pots that are like biodegradable pots, so avoiding buying plastic pots. Especially the black plastic pots, because those, you know, aren't recyclable. And the reason why black plastic isn't recyclable, I think people sort of are aware that it's not recyclable, but they don't really know why. So when your recycling goes to the MRF, the materials recycling facility, it all goes on these long conveyor belts, and all these lasers. It's all very high tech, you know, it's lasers working out which goes where, and puffs of air to blow paper this way and plastic this way and all the rest of it. So these lasers, they can tell what kind of plastic it is and where it should go by scanning it by their clever lasery ways. But the problem with black plastic, and it's kind of a funny one really, it's because it's the same color as the belt. So the lasers have obviously been trained not to like work out how to recycle the belt. So all that black plastic just merges into the belt. And that's why it's not recyclable. I digress. So yeah, so recycle it. So don't use black plastic pots. Secondhand tools, you know, car boot sales often have really good quality kind of old tools, which, you know, you might have to replace a handle, but you can do that. You know, you can unscrew it and re-put a new one in, things like that. Making sure that we're buying things from the UK as much as possible. I mean, this is kind of, I digress a bit, but you know, there's an issue with, there's a disease that's spreading in olive trees. So it's making sure that we're buying from sort of scrupulous garden centres that are ensuring that the plants they don't come into the UK with this disease, things like that. Yeah, this is all things I'm picking up off Gardener's World, so whatever Monty tells me, I do. But yeah, I guess growing things from seeds and things like that, I can't really, I mean, I like gardening, but I'm not very good at it. I'm a have-a-go gardener. So yeah.
I've started using, so if we get any plastic trays for anything, I use them as so if we get any plastic trays from like food or something, to then use it to catch the water when you're standing your pot up. So then you know, if you're growing your seeds inside. I think it's a question of the reusing stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for example, so instead of buying any pots, in fact, if you buy yogurt pots or any plastic pot is a plastic pot, because it's had yogurt in it before or whatever it's had in its past life, it's now just a pot. So a few holes popped into the bottom and it's a pot. So yeah, I was growing tomato plants in old, whatever I could find, whatever old pots. I did hoard all my plastic from last year, so I had lots of plastic yogurt pots.
Yeah, we've got a comment about not using from Plastic-Free West Hampstead, not using any pesticide, organic or not, in the garden to keep the natural ecosystems going. Yes, no pesticide.
Yeah, what I did is I made a pond. That was very exciting. We've got a frog, so I'm hoping they will keep the slugs down. Yeah, it's things like that. So yeah, no pesticides and what else was I going to say? Natural predators, and yeah, hoping that equilibrium in the garden will keep the pests down.
I don't think there are any other questions. Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Sorry, I'm reading now.
Yes, I saw a comment. Yeah, it's a fun fact. It's a fun party fact, the black recycling. I'm full of fun party facts if you, the life and soul of a party, if you want your recycling facts.
Excellent. We're getting lots of thank yous from people. That's really nice. Thank you. It's really weird doing it this way, so I'm pleased that it's working for you. My family were having an enormous argument earlier in the webinar, so that was an interesting moment here.
Well, do you think if there are no more questions that we will love you and leave you?